Hey, welcome back, everybody, and thank you for joining us for another episode of BCS Community Connections Podcast. Today on the podcast, I have Mr. Chad Hanks from the Crawfish Hole here in town. And so I had an opportunity where I was able to communicate with Chad, and we were talking about his business, which has been around for a while. Some of you may be aware of that. I was one of the ones that wasn't, and that's one of the reasons why I love doing the podcast, is to be able to talk to business owners who are doing things in town that maybe I'm not aware of, that other people aren't aware of, and we're able to basically bring you on the show, talk to you about that, and then get that information out in front of people for reference, whether it's, I already use them and they're great, and I recommend them to all my friends, to, I didn't even know, and I've been looking for someplace like that. So that's really kind of the thing that I look at, is when we get people on the shows to really be able to talk about that. So what I want to start with before we start talking about the Crawfish Hole is talk about you a little bit and kind of where you grew up, what brought you to town, what you do here in town that brought you here, and that kind of stuff. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I grew up down there, or in Bridge City, Texas, which is east of Beaumont on the Louisiana border. So I moved here in 1999 to go to A&M, probably like most people, and never left.
Yeah.
My first year in school, I think I was going to Blinn. My wife was going to A&M. I'd always had a desire to be in law enforcement, and so at the time, I talked to Chief Feldman at College Station PD about being a reserve, police officer. So he met me and he said, "Man, if you'd apply, I think you get hired." Of course, I was 20 years old, thinking, "Okay, I just want to be a reserve," and so that he definitely pushed me, and so College Station and Bryan were both testing at the time, so I tested with both, not expecting to get an offer from either, because go to Bryan's test and there's probably 400 people, in the Brazos Center testing, and end up testing out. Scored number one on the written test, and of course passed the physical, and then ultimately got offered the job by both Bryan and College Station later. So I took it, and of course still here 21 years later. So 21
years with Bryan PD,
yes.
Or has that been through multiples? Or
no, just with Bryan. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what kept us here.
We were talking a little bit before we came on air about, he actually knew my wife, and my wife worked for the city of Bryan and all that good stuff. So 21 yees as an officer. What were you going to school for? What were you initially kind of seeing yourself doing prior to that?
Well, I ended up getting my degree in psychology. So, law enforcement was something I always wanted to do. So It's kind of, it wasn't a career change or anything I wanted to do. So it was, I started at Bryan, didn't go to school for a little bit, and then I went back and ended up graduating from A&M while I was there. So I just went and got a degree in psychology, since I can use that at work.
I was going to say, probably comes in handy when you're out there.
Yeah, and it does. When I'm talking to somebody, of course, I'm not a psychologist. By no means, but if I'm talking to somebody, there's things I can recognize that they're saying that I know what they may be experiencing, so I can kind of direct how I'm dealing with them based on what's going through them, their crisis.
Yeah, it's definitely probably in the line of sight that you may not have seen even the use for it to the level that you probably use it now that you're 21 years in, and realize what it's come to pay you back and having that in your pocket. So 21 years with Bryan PD, that was your main job, still your main job right now.
Yes.
Tell me about the startings of the Crawfish Hole. Like, how did it come to be? How did you see yourself kind of putting that together while you're still running this full-time operation over here with PD, and then you're kind of doing this on the side?
Yes.
So tell me kind of how all that started.
My mom and stepdad started a crawfish business in Bridge City probably close to 20 years ago now. And so I used to go home. Once my stepdad got it busier, I'd go home on, the busy weekends for crawfish, or Easter, Mother's Day, Memorial Weekend. So I used to go home and just help on the weekend just to make some extra money and help them out. And so I started kind of learning the business then. And I remember my stepdad telling me, he's like, if you opened a place up there, I really think you could probably sell 100 sacks a week, which I thought he was crazy. There's no way I can sell 100 sacks up there at all. So I learned the business that way. Crawfish wasn't, if you'd asked me in high school, you have a crawfish business, I would have looked at you, like you're crazy. So, because even then growing up, our families, my grandparents were from Kaplan, Louisiana. They spoke French. So we did crawfish growing up, but it wasn't, I do a few times a year. So it's something I knew and experienced, but didn't know anything about the business. So when I'd go home and help, I started learning more and more about the business and how things run and just kind of the setup. And so my wife and I kind of talked about, that'd be nice to be able to do one up there, but never took it real seriously. And then finally, we had some extra money that, we're like, hey, let's give it a shot. And so we started out small. I bought a used cooler off of eBay, I think. And then my stepdad sold me an old box truck that he had. And then I rented a place over there behind Tractor Supply through, Josh Eisenhower with Clark and Eisenhower worked with me. And so I think I was paying like $450 a month, so it was a little bitty spot just to get it started. And so we just kind of went in and, if it worked, it worked. If it didn't, it didn't. It was kind of how we went into it. So
you weren't completely all in invested. Some people that we talk to and that comes to the table, or they start up a small business, they dump everything they own into it, and it's all or nothing kind of deal. So this for you kind of started as a little side project. Correct. And just, hey, we'll see how this goes. And so what's really interesting about, so I know a lot of people that are from Louisiana. One of the things that's really interesting about the culture is, crawfish is it's emblazoned into the culture there. It's not necessarily something that people think about. It's almost like if you came here and we talk about Mexican food and tacos and things like that, it's kind of that same concept there. It's just a part of who they are and their culture. And then when you look at that east line of Texas kind of moving back this way, I mean, there's so much movement back and forth from people who move from Louisiana to here, that there's also that line of culture that even bleeds into East Texas as you work over there. So you come to the process of going, I'm going to try this, just see how this works. College town, so there's also that question there about, okay, how deep can we go in here with the students and kind of all of these other things to prop up. And you started up, so you're on your 10th year?
Correct.
Okay. So 10 years ago you start up and you open it up, and kind of walk me through that process of when you're getting it up and running and you have your truck. You've now got a location that you can store it at to be able to use as a drop site once you go and pick all of it up. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But tell me, between year 1 and year 10 now and that stair step through there, I mean, tell me what you learned in that process.
When we first started, obviously, there wasn't much demand here. It was, usually if I did crawfish up here, I'd drive back home, pick it up and bring it back. There wasn't a whole lot available, so there wasn't a huge demand at the time, but we kind of hit at the right time because that ball was starting to roll here. And so, when we got started, I think I figured out which restaurants were doing crawfish, and I just kind of went up to them and told them who I was. And, I never liked pushy salesmen, so I know still to this day I'm not that way. I'll go to somebody new and say, hey, look, this is who we are. If we can help you out, just let me know.
Right.
And I'll walk away because and that's just me personally. I just don't like people pushing me, which it seems to work well because usually we get a call back going, hey, why don't you bring some by, and of course, being local, we can offer, more attentive service. We are going to be more expensive than somebody coming out of Louisiana or Houston, but we're way more attentive, you know.
And your turnaround's a lot quicker,
correct.
Obviously.
Yeah. And they need something, and that's something that we can do. If a restaurant, needs 3 extra sacks at 5 p.m, we'll be there in a minute. Whereas nobody else is going to offer that, so they can, even though we're a little more expensive, they actually can help their customers more in the long run that way. So when I first started out, we just kind of cold call people, just went up to them, really just hope for the best, the retail side of it. And we had a website and a Facebook page, and that's about how we advertised, and just waited for the phone to ring.
And so before we came on air, we were talking about kind of your split between that business now as opposed to what it was when you started up. But you initially started up not really with the idea of I'm going to service every individual that walks up. It was more so we're going to get these and we're going to provide them to local businesses, whether they're restaurants or businesses that are going to in turn turn around and sell them by the bag again.
Yes.
So you're kind of you have a distributor, you're the middle part of that and kind of pushing that through to businesses that you're setting up here in town or setting up with here in town. And so there's a lot to be said about having local suppliers as opposed to out of town suppliers, or even in some cases out of state suppliers, especially in the restaurant industry. In the restaurant industry, you never know kind of what's going to happen, especially here in College Station when you have, let's say you're first getting open here. and you have a parents' weekend, you have, like you had said, a Mother's Day, a Memorial Day, that kind of stuff. Those are all spike parts of the business as well too, for that type of service being needed in the grocery stores or in the places that are restaurants that are selling during that time frame. So the ability for you to be able to turn around and go, hey man, I got my cell phone on me, just call me when you need me. I can get somebody over there, or I'll personally deliver it to you. Then also sets that tone for future as well too, because you're not only invested in the idea that you're trying to grow this business, but you're invested in the reputation side for your business as well. That I don't necessarily want to come service you at midnight, you know, but if you need me, I'm going to be there for you. Hopefully in some cases, as long as the product's fresh and ready to go for you, that day I'm going to end up pulling up to you.
Yeah. Cause I'd met a customer one time, and he had told me a story about, he had bought a bunch of crawfish. He was a caterer from a guy in Louisiana. And when he dropped off to him and he's going to his job, he gets there and a lot of it's dead.
Yeah.
And he calls the guy back and the guy's phone's off. So it was an intentional thing. Like, I had a bunch of bad stuff to get rid of. And whereas, you know, like I said, we live here, we work here. It doesn't do me any good to do that to a customer, because you know who I am. You know where I work, you know where our place is at. And so that's, you know, that's why I tell people with going local is that we have a lot more invested in this community than others do. You know, now granted, with our out of town customers, we don't do that. That's just not an ethical way to operate. But you know, it happens with others, and so that's why, you know, we try to tell people, look, we're here. You know where we're at. You get our phone number. You can stop by and visit. So, you know, are there going to be problems in the business? Absolutely. Let's just communicate. Let's work through it. It'll be fine. You know, and it's something that, when we have those issues, that we work together through my stepbrother, you know, then of course with the farmers and docs. You know, it's a line of people that we work with, and so, you know, we can work through issues, but at the end of the day, we're never just going to ignore you and say, no, well, you know. Yeah,
and I mean for people, you know, you were talking about this guy who sells his deal, turns his phone off, and the first thing I'm thinking when you were talking about that is when I go down to the coast, for example. And you'll see these pop-up trucks on corners and things, and they're selling shrimp, they're selling bait, they're selling all this other stuff. You know, yours is this legitimate business in town, physical location. I'm not popping up in spots and just trying to sell around. And not only do you have that reputation that you're trying to build and protect there, you have your personal reputation, you have your full-time reputation as a police officer. To be able to keep all of that in place and ensure that, hey, as I build this, I want to build this right. Now that means I'm willing to sacrifice, in some cases, I'm willing to sacrifice quantity over quality. I want quality first, and then I'll get you quantity on the backside of that. So I've watched some of your trips, and that's kind of, we'll get into this next topic about kind of how you fulfill the orders that come into you, because the process for most people that are ordering from you, let's talk about that first. So if we'll start as your distributors, they're basically ordering, because they're going to be ordering probably way more bulk than your retail.
Yeah. So like the restaurants and stores, you know, they'll usually text us or call us and let us know what they need for, you know, the week or the day before, you know, kind of on how they order. The individual retail customer, you know, usually they'll call us, email us, Facebook message, usually about the 3 ways that they communicate with us on their orders. Once they tell us what they need, usually the week of, you know, they may call us a few days ahead of time, how many sacks they need or whatever, and then we'll figure out what day they want it. And then, you know, of course, it's Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. We have set store hours, and they just come in during those hours. Usually pick up, you know, 5 to 6 days a week consistently. So like I tell most people, the crawfish that you're boiling today was likely swimming yesterday morning. Yeah. You know, so everything that gets brought in was caught, you know, the day before. So they, you know, we usually make that trip down the night before or the morning of, depending where we're meeting my stepbrother at, pick up and then bring it back to town and have it ready for him.
So you're running, looking on your page, I saw that you were running a U-Haul truck, you were running a van. I mean, I've seen you running all kinds of stuff down through there. Yeah. But you're throwing these bags of crawfish in the back there, then they're getting iced over so that they can make the trip. Yes. They're not under duress while they're coming back. And then you get them back, you off dock them there at your place, and then they go into a cooler that you've got built. And we're not talking about, you know, a little roll up Coleman cooler.
Yeah,
we're
it's
talking
a 15 by 20 walk-in cooler.
Yeah, it's an industrial size. So you roll this thing up in there, and again, there are pictures on this stuff if you guys want to kind of check out how that process looks. but you have stacks, pallets worth of stuff that's in there based on those orders that have come in.
Yes.
And your goal is you don't necessarily need the phone call, week, 2 weeks in advance. You
Correct.
actually can fulfill those orders just a day or two in advance.
Yes.
As long as people are kind of letting you know really close to the process. Because in your preference, you would probably rather have that anyway.
Correct. Yeah, we prefer the reservations just because we know what to get now. And like you said, being local and understanding what's going on in the community, I'll up my orders based on what's going on. Like you said, Parents Weekend is absolutely huge for us. And what's funny is my stepbrother, he now knows, it's y'all's Parents Weekend, because all of a sudden out of the blue, we're just ordering a lot more on a random weekend. And so we really keep up with what's going on in town. There's things that, like Chili Fest, when it goes on, I'm not going to order as much because we're losing a lot of customers when out to Chili Fest, and so we're paying attention to those different things. And so a lot of times people will, last year we've gotten, since we're operating 7 days a week, we can get a little more aggressive on the weekends with our ordering, and so a lot of people can call absolutely last minute, and. Yeah, we've got it. We brought in 50 sacks, 100 sacks extra for that day. And so people can call us, hey, I'll be there in 10 minutes. Yeah, come on, we got it,
Well, and I'm assuming each year, with the exception of 2020, but each year you're probably making these, and we were always referred to them as a correction of errors, like, okay, this moved from here to here, or this wasn't a big event this year, or, it was a big event the first year, but it died down the second year. So you can kind of manipulate that around those events. You were talking about Parents Weekend. The first thing I'm sitting there thinking is that's moved a lot. That's it used to be that was a solid time frame every year. And then they started moving it around, and then here in 2020, it really got moved around. And so, and then we were talking about like the season. So crawfish season for you're getting ready to ramp back up again.
Correct. Yeah. So usually January to June, early July is about typical, and that's for about everybody. I mean, you can get crawfish in October, November. The catch is just real inconsistent at times, and you can go beyond July. But even then, it can be inconsistent. Here locally, like I said, by the time it gets really hot, the demand goes down. I mean, so even if we can get it into August, the demand's so low that it's just not worth us to operate anymore, because we're losing money heading down to pick up.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you're spending the gas and everything to make the run. And so your season, so to say, then is really this week, really after we get through New Year's.
Correct, yes.
So this week kind of starts ramping it back up for you. And then you run all the way to mid to end of June.
Correct. Yeah. Usually, that's about the time we've made it to July a few times, but usually mid to late June is about where it stops.
And then you can, if something came around, like if you knew something was going on or an event, we were talking about, when they were going to move football, because in my head I was sitting there thinking, okay, I've been to multiple tailgates, but the thing that I said was, I don't know that I've ever seen anybody boiling at the tailgates or whatever. Usually everybody's grilling, but again, it's usually 90, 100 degrees outside. So as events pop up, or if things are going to move or whatever that may be, potentially an investable weekend for you, or an investable week to go and get some stuff, then you can do that.
Yes.
But the prime season really falls around about 6 months.
Correct. Yes.
And then once you're done with that prime season, then you kind of shut everything down.
Yes.
And then pre-plan again for the next season.
Correct. Yeah. So we'll make adjustments for the next year, and usually at the end of the season, we'll kind of write down a to-do list. Hey, this is what we want to do next year, and try to change it, make it a little bit better.
And advertising wise, you were talking about when you first started advertising, it was really word of mouth, social media.
Correct.
Not really, ads and stuff like that, where you're, physical ads or commercialized or anything like that. So
I think our second year we started doing some commercials and radio, and it worked great. I mean, it got the word out. It's, for us, there's so much that changes as what's the demand is and what we have extra. So social media, our Facebook page is the easiest way to get out that, hey, I've got, we got extra sacks today, call us, that gets it out. Whereas I can't necessarily call the TV station and on Saturday morning go, hey, can you run me an ad real quick saying we have extra? So it doesn't, Facebook's probably the easiest way for us to get that information out the fastest. And of course you just boost it and it gets out to even more people,
Do you see yourself being able, or did you utilize like BCS Meals and Deals and things like that, where some of those pages popped up and had huge followings? Were you able to?
I don't know if we'd advertised on that one last year. I can't quite remember, because Brandon, our general manager, handles a lot of the social media as well too. So I don't know if we did. I followed it just because of the deals we were getting off of it, So
you couldn't go anywhere and sit down and eat. So,
and so what kind of helped us last year before COVID, before we talked about in the KBTX morning show with Fallon Appleton. She came by and it was just about to hit because I think we were talking about it, and we'd come up with these personal sacks. They're just 5-pound sacks that we put in these little bags, and that was kind of based on customer demands. We get people call all the time, hey, can I get a couple pounds? And we usually no, we just don't do that. The half sack, which is 15, 20 pounds, was usually our lowest. And then Brandon and I last year were like, you know what, let's try it. Let's just see what happens. So we did these 5-pound bags, and we advertised on that morning show, and I think that first weekend we had a few people order. I was like, yeah, that's fine. They're easy to make. We'll get them done. And then once COVID really hit, and like you said, people were having to stay home and they couldn't go to restaurants, those personal sacks just went through the roof. They're really easy to do, and people were able to get. For husband and wife, 5 pounds was perfect.
Yeah. So your retail customer really, prior to that, were those 15-pound, 40 pounds. Yes. We've got family coming in, or we're doing an event or something like that, and doing a big cook. Mm-hmm. And then you go to COVID, and COVID basically turns it into stay home. Yes. You can't have more than 10 people, that kind of stuff. And so it becomes more about feeding the family at that point, as opposed to feeding, an event or a group or whatever. So now you've got this opportunity where you can provide these bags as well too. Mm-hmm. And y'all have different services that you offer as a part of picking up that deal. Now, this is also done, I guess, in the process of reserving it. So walk me through those different services that you guys offer to a client that's wanting to order from you guys.
Yeah, so for retail, when they call an order, sometimes if it's a really big order, if it's somebody that's having a family reunion, they need 400 pounds, and they ask, hey, can you deliver it? We'll usually do that. Yeah, that's no problem. We'll deliver it to you. But usually the customer that just needs a couple sacks, they'll come to our shop. We're on Kane Road, right there across the railroad tracks. So usually they'll come there, they'll walk in the office, tell us, who they are, and we have their information down. So we'll get what they ordered. One of our guys will go to their vehicle, load them up. We'll ice it down for them as long as we have enough ice. If early in the morning we got plenty, and by the end of the day we're usually out of ice. So, but we'll load their vehicle up. They pay. We carry seasoning and stuff like that in the shop as well, so they can buy that if they need it. So it's really they're in and out in about 5 minutes. It's pretty quick. Whereas if you go to somewhere else, you may be walking around the store with crawfish in your buggy, and so it's we'll load it up for you. And a lot of people are surprised when I say, yeah, you're loaded. Because they think they got to wait for it. I'm like, no, you're good.
Yeah, and so talking before we came on here that I used to be a general manager with Walmart, and a common misperception is the idea that crawfish are going to stink in general, and that's really kind of the opposite in nature. If they're taken care of, the chain, so to say, the chain from bringing them in hasn't been breached. You don't really get that. You get there's always going to be a smell that goes to it just in general, but there's this other smell that goes to it when it's been compromised, and so that usually involves where you're starting to see them dying. Or they've been dead for a little while. So again, for customers that are looking, to purchase this stuff, again, that's kind of an important process to look at as well too. You pick up a 40-pound bag, you can't see what's dead in there, and what's not dead in there.
And that's something that it'll be a problem from now to eternity, is what we call dead loss. And the crawfish go through a molt, and it's usually a big problem January, February, maybe into March, and it's them growing. It's natural. We do what we can do to prevent it, as far as to mitigate the loss, but we can't prevent it.
Right.
And what that does is they shed their exoskeleton, and if they're caught and there's not much sun, they can't harden that shell up, and so they die much quicker. And then once they get in the sack, if let's say a handful or a pound in there end up dying in the sack, well, that loss exasperates throughout the sack. So we may have 5, 6, 10 pounds dead in the sack, and it's something we've been going long enough to where when a customer experiences it, we work with them. Yeah. We're like, this is unfortunately, this is an issue that can happen. And if it's a bad enough loss, then we can work through our suppliers, and everybody can kind of mitigate that loss, together. And then the customers, we help as much as we can on our end, as far as just completely refunding that loss, or hey, come in next time, we'll knock off 10 pounds of your deal.
Well, and again, the the window of pickup to drop off to them is also something that can help mitigate that as well too.
Yeah. So usually, like I said before, when you pick up crawfish, yours very likely will swim in the morning before.
Right.
And that's one of the first things we check when the drivers come in at night and they unload, and when Brandon and I are walking the cooler in the morning, is just we check that. You can smell it.
Yeah.
When it's a really fresh smell per se, or when you're like, man, we've got some loss somewhere. So usually, we try to find it. We'll go through the sacks, and if we find the ones that they're suspect, in that sack, we have a washer at the shop. It's got a conveyor belt and everything else on it. So we'll drop those in the washer, and we actually go through that. This past Memorial weekend was kind of a freak deal, but we had a lot of molt going on, and I forgot we had well over 100 sacks in the cooler, and we washed every one of them.
Yeah.
It was a very, very long day. And fortunately, I think we only had 2 customers call back that day and say, hey, they had some loss, but everybody else, they didn't have a clue that even happened.
And washing for you guys is normally a service that you would pay for as well too, if you were looking at that. So that you bring those in, that customer says, hey, I want these washed, so they don't have to go through the purging process and everything else.
When they order the washed, it's we do it for them. They can literally cut the bag, drop it in, and boil it. They don't have to mess with it because we've taken any grass out or any dead out and stuff like that. So it's done.
So this is where my inexperience of how many crawfish boils I love to eat them. Don't necessarily love to cook them. But I noticed something that was on your site that, and I'm sure a lot of people do it, and I know we did it when we were doing it, which is you put them in, you go for the purge, and you put in salt.
Yes, yeah.
And so, and I guess a lot of this also really depends upon how quickly from that process to boiling that they're going as well too. But y'all don't recommend using salt as a part of the purging process.
It can kill them because they don't live in salt water. There's a myth that that makes them throw up, and actually LSU did a study on it and said no, it's a complete myth. So. I tell people, I've had customers argue with me, no, it works. I'm like, if that's what you want to do, then that's fine. I mean, that's your process, but we don't recommend it. And usually if somebody will call and, if they complain about a lot of loss and it's kind of out of the blue, like we hadn't had any calls about anything, no issues, that's one of the first questions we'll ask. Did you purge them in salt? Well, yeah, I left them overnight. I'm like, yeah, sorry, I can't, I can't eat that loss for you.
Yeah. And we didn't, when we did it that day, we literally went from tub to boil, you know? So, I mean, where there wasn't this long process of them sitting in that deal. Now you could definitely tell, I thought what was interesting. So when we put the salt in to purge it, the first thing you think is, oh, well, these things are moving around. Yes. Oh, so that must be doing something, right? And then the water's obviously getting dirty. Yes. So we've done everything we wanted to do there. And let's wash this out. Let's do it one more time. Yeah. And so, but you guys actually with your machinery that you have in there, you have, I'm going to say tub, but tub's not the appropriate term for it. What do y'all refer to?
We just kind of count the basin.
Yeah, there you go.
What it is. And it's basically like a big tub, but it can fit up to 2 sacks in there, and then we just cycle fresh water through it, so it's constantly got water, fresh water rolling through it.
And then you have a conveyor belt that runs over.
They go up the belt, and then we got sprayers on top of the belt, so they're getting washed off as they're coming up the belt, and they fall on the table, and then once they hit the tables, when we sort through them and pick off any dead or any grass, stuff like that.
So you also have as another part of that service. So washing is one of those services. Right. Another part of that service, though, is also going with a more, not an upper scale or an upgrade, product, a premium, So where you're actually going through and picking through these and going, okay, this one's better quality, crawfish than the other one.
So we call those our selects. I don't have a grader at our shop. I do want to buy one. They're about $15,000. So one day we'll have a grader, but my stepbrother does. And so usually when somebody orders a selects, we just call, I'll tell my stepbrother, hey, I need, X many select sacks this week, and they'll take care of it on their end and ship them to us. One of the docks that my stepbrother buys from, they also have several graders at their place, and so they can even do it on their end too for us.
So is this a machine that just?
Correct. They start out as a potato grater. I don't know if you're familiar how vegetables are graded.
Right.
So as they go down the line, the spools kind of get wider and wider, so the bigger crawfish fall at the very end.
Right.
And then, of course, the big ones will fall off the grater. And so my stepbrother, they'll have an ice chest down there, and they're catching all those. So, usually, like I said, when people buy the selects from us, they're coming off like the last 2 or 3 rows off that grater. So they're big. Now the grading won't start until the crawfish are a lot healthier and bigger. So people may ask us in January, hey, can I get selects? And no, we're not even going to try it because you'll run through 100 sacks and maybe get 10 pounds of big ones. So that we have to usually March is when we'll start seeing those come in. So, and even the selects, I don't buy a bunch of extra of those. If you try to call me last minute for selects, if I've got it, it's because somebody didn't pick up or I made a mistake and ordered too many. They're because they do cost us a lot to order, and so usually if I don't sell that select as a select, I've lost money. So if I've got extra of those, it's by a complete fluke.
Yeah. So I was preparation here. I was kind of researching, I guess, some of the facts, I guess, about crawfish or whatever. I guess I didn't realize that the assumption for most people is you either see them and they're red, or they're maybe a little on the kind of reddish brown side, but they can be multiple colors. I mean,
yes, yeah,
there's yellow, green. I mean,
most of the ones you see are just called the red swamp crawfish. That's the most typical. You do see of course, I'm not a expert completely on their different types, but there's the ones that are more white. That's a river crawfish, and their claws are gonna be more narrow. You'll see some farms that'll have more of those. A lot of some of the basin crawfish, you may see some river stuff coming out like that. But most of the stuff people experience is going to be that red swamp.
Yep.
We see some blue ones come in. That's just they're a red swamp, but that's just an anomaly. It's just a genetic issue. And then of course we've seen some albinos come through. Those are very rare.
Yeah. Well, and then they can drown.
Yes.
So if they don't have access to air, I think it's like 4 to 6 hours or something like that. That they got to have access to air,
correct.
Or if they're under, they have to have access to some kind of bubbleized, oxygenated air or something within the water.
Yeah.
They have 2 sets of 4 legs, one for crawling and one for swimming. But they actually move. They swim faster backwards than they do crawling forward. I guess they crawl forward and swim backwards. So most people probably never even see this stuff because, it's from bag to, the boiler or whatever. So, but I was just looking at some of the stuff and I'm like, oh, that's pretty interesting when you get into it. And so, and we talked about the culture of that. So as one of the interesting things that I noticed here, probably in the last 3 years, probably more so than anything else, 3 to 4 years, 2020 probably wasn't a great year for it, but more specialized seafood places starting to open up, whether that's storefront or whether that's trailers or whatever that are starting to kind of pop up around town. And so these are the same places that, what you're getting in those particular deals, they either are being supplied from somewhere or maybe even from you in that process. But they also, the other thing is y'all don't do just crawfish.
Correct. Yeah. We do shrimp as well. It's a Gulf shrimp. Now they come in 5-pound frozen boxes. So it's easy for me to handle. We've gone down before and picked up, all the shrimp that's coming in is IQF unless it's frozen in bulk, box. But so it's, we've done that before, driven down, picked some up, defrosted them and sold them. And which it worked well, but it's just if I don't sell all that shrimp, it just goes to waste. And so the 5-pound frozen boxes, I mean, they're Gulf of Mexico shrimp. It's easier for us to store. And if I don't sell it, it's fine. It just goes back in the freezer.
Right.
Last year we because of COVID, kind of figure out some different ways to make some money and to survive. We started doing snow crab, and wasn't same thing. We have customers call about it, and I'm like, I don't know, Yeah. And fortunately, Cisco supplies snow crab, so we buy our shrimp and snow crab from Cisco. So I got with our rep and asked about it, and he said, yeah. So we tried it, and it turned out very well. So, and actually, it's very good. I never really tried it before, in boiling, and it has a really good flavor to it and stuff like that. So I'm glad we tried it because it turned out well.
Well, and a lot of people. I've been to the crawfish bowl where it's just strictly all crawfish with potatoes and corn and stuff that's in there. But then I've also been to the ones where it's also crab that's in there, it's shrimp that's in there. It's all kind of put in together. Yeah. So you're kind of a one-stop shop for that stuff. Again, these are all things that you're asking, reservations on and things like that to let you know out on the front side, but things that you can provide as well too. And so, coming out of 2019, we talked that when you were coming out of 2019 into 2020 and starting up your season was really ramping up. Like you were in a situation where, you felt like you're probably going to
Yes.
have one of the best years you
Yes.
had.
Yeah, starting in January, it was the catch was good. There was minimal problems, a lot of demand, and then like I said, going into February, like I said, I told my wife like this is going to be that that year where where finally everything just hits perfect, and then March, you know, and we actually had some stuff set up with a customer that was going to lead into a lot of really good things for us, and they already had some stuff planned, and then of course that week it shut down. They called us and said, hey, we've got to shut everything down. So I was like, well, I understand. So we were kind of Brandon and I were thinking like, man, how do we survive this? And crawfish is such a huge thing anyway in this community, still, and it's growing every year, but now we had to adapt because a lot of our huge wholesale customers, the restaurants and stuff, were getting just hit hard, and they were trying to react of how they can do it. And and talking to some of the restaurants, they say that crawfish isn't quite a huge profit for them. It's a lot more for the customer. So we weren't seeing them really trying to push our product out, and so we had to get creative with what we did, which is why like those personal sacks just took off because people were at home, buying those. The half sacks turned out well. We were still getting people coming in and buying, like one sack at a time, but the days of people coming in and buying 4 or 5 sacks they weren't there at all,
right?
And of course it was funny. May, June hit, we started seeing those numbers come back, the 3, 4 sacks. Of course, we would joke, my God, what are y'all doing? I don't personally care what you do in your time off.
Yeah, they're like, hey, this Chad guy,
exactly.
He's an officer, right?
But yeah, so we had to get really creative with that stuff and come up with different ideas and fortunately the retail is what, like my stepdad said, don't ever, even though the bulk of the business is wholesale and pushing the volume out, he said always take care of your retail customer, and that's something that from day one I always try to do. I would bend over backwards to meet somebody to make sure they got what they needed, and finally that, I mean, of course, I think our retail business has grown because of that, but in 2020 it really took off because the retail customer saved us.
I mean, nobody could go anywhere, so your demand at wholesale probably drops through the floor, would be my guess.
Yes.
And so now all of a sudden it becomes, I can only eat Chick-fil-A and all these other places so many times, and then let's, what can we do that's different than that? Yeah,
and we got really lucky with the way our family's set up, and we started this business. I told my wife, if we're going to do it, we're 100%. Let's do this right, and my stepdad was the same way, and so a lot of people that were getting crawfish across the border were getting shut down because the governor had shut down the border. Nobody's crossing into Louisiana because Louisiana's cases were so high back in the spring. However, we're DOT, so my stepbrother could cross because we've got DOT trucks, and so DOT's allowed, and so that saved us because we were able to get it back, whereas we had other people that were just shut down completely. So even though, and of course, once the governor was releasing what's essential and what's not, we were included in the essential list.
Gotta have your crawfish.
Yes, it was a food staple. So we were, it was allowed to come back in, and so that's that helped us a lot too. That we were set up properly with DOT and stuff like that because the trucks weren't getting stopped at the border.
Well, one of the things we talk about when we bring business people onto the show is it's easy to kind of look at 2020 and just go, man, I'll scrap that year and be done with it. But how many lessons were learned in 2020 for businesses that'll make them better businesses down the road?
Correct.
Not just the idea, hey, if this thing happens again, then I know what it's at least going to look like. More the idea of going, okay, so if we offer these particular services in your particular situation, we'll say the 5-pound bag, which wasn't on the radar initially, and then go, okay, well, let's just try this and see how this works. And then you go, okay, well, we've got something here, but then you kind of go back to it and go, okay, just because this may be opening back up or things are starting to opening back up or they're loosening a little bit, which, right now, who knows which way they're going or whatever. But, now it becomes this idea of, I don't know that I want to go away from this anymore. This might be something we just need to be inclusive as a part of our business as well too. And if it does great. But it's always an option there that we don't necessarily then have to go, okay, well, let's figure out what the next thing is. We knew that this was something that helped bail us out in the process. So a lot of businesses kind of figured that stuff out. You had businesses that weren't doing takeout, for example, that all of a sudden could do nothing other than takeout. But then also learning, that, okay, well, I'm going to go to takeout food, but now I also have to, I think I had Justin on the show and we were talking about, every single order then had to have silverware. It had to have, all the condiments. It had to have, a clamshell for every single thing. I mean, so that ends up increasing as a part of the business as well too. And so I'm sure 2020 probably gave you a line of sight as well too into what the future of your business was going to look like, kind of indirectly without even knowing that that's what it was going to do. It's more so like, okay, how are we going to do this where we can make some money? Because we started off gangbusters and then boom, here comes March. And hey, by the way, there's no need for any of this stuff at this point. So, so you learn probably how to advertise a little bit better. You learn how packaging for your product becomes more important to, like you said, the retail customers. So it wasn't so much at that point where, hey, man, as long as we're distributing here wholesale, we're good. Okay, wholesale goes through the floor. Now what? And then your dad's advice of, keep the retail customer in your back pocket because they'll be the ones in the long run. Because a retail person they are your distributorship to a wholesale is not word of mouth. I mean, that's the way I kind of look at that. Like, if you're doing that somewhere, most people don't sit there. I cannot think of a time I've ever gone to a seafood place, had something and go, man, where did you get these from? It's always attached to that restaurant. So if I go someplace and I have really good crawfish, I don't think about the backside question about where did it come from or who supplied it to you. I just think about, hey, man, this is y'all's crawfish. It was good. The retail customer is the one that when they go home, they snap a picture of it. They put it on their Instagram and on their Facebook. And it's funny I say that because I have a friend that was on your page that actually, I think y'all had posted something about, hey, make sure you get your reservations in. He takes a picture, which Chris, I won't completely front you out here, but he takes a picture of his pot boiling on the kitchen. He goes, hey, we did our part, so, and to me, again, it was that same idea of going, man, I've been, so over the last, we moved here in 2001. We moved away for about 4 years and came back. So, you're looking at 16 years. And in that time frame of the 10 years that you've been in business, we were away maybe 4 of those. And I was sitting there telling my wife, I'm like, I've never heard of this place. I hear of a lot of places. But again, it's that word of mouth. And so, Chris, when you're out there, you tell me about this place so I can go get some. But it's the idea that retail customer almost has a bigger stretch for you long term than your distributorships to wholesale, because wholesale kind of gets lost in that process. It's definitely more money in your pocket to go wholesale. But your retail customers are the ones that can kind of divert some of those ones. Like I was telling you before we sat down here, we did a crawfish bowl and didn't really realize there's a whole lot of places that we could go to. So we show up on HEB's doorstep. Same process. We order it that week and then we'll go pick it up on Friday or Saturday morning or whatever it was. But had I known, and again, this is a part of the reason for having the podcast here, had I known that we have something that's a little more local, and people will say, well, HEB, and they pay their taxes and do all this other stuff. Listen, HEB's not going to close their doors. So I want to spend my money somewhere where it's helping a small business continue to do business here in town. And I think the one thing that people miss in that interaction isn't just the idea, like what you said, like I've got a reputation to protect, right? I don't have an HEB that's up above my head that people know. So I'm building a business with a reputation that is the backbone of my business. I want everybody to know that if you come to me, you're coming to me, like we said, quality first, and then we can do the quantity on the backside of that. But I'm not going to sell you something that is going to compromise my business or compromise what somebody thinks about my business. And so, the thing that you were talking about earlier, and I was kind of listening to that, is we put money into these local businesses, and then you don't really understand, not only is that helping you pay your bills and house and all this other stuff and keeping people employed, and it's also diverting into other avenues, not just even locally. I mean, the local part of it is great, but it's also maintaining this business that you're pulling from, where you're getting your product at. That's going down into that realm as well too. So it has this long stretch outreach into other communities as well too, by keeping that business local. So, as people are looking at what are my avenues and my options, I'm not trying to divert you from places, but the whole part of starting this podcast was for local small businesses. And so, and being able to get that information out in front of people, where when you open your wallet, man, hey, are you going to spend maybe a little bit more? Maybe, because it's pretty hard to compete against an HEB, that has, 15 square blocks of distribution in San Antonio that they pull from.
Yeah. And we have customers that, they'll tell us that. And we do, we supply several of the stores, locally with Kroger and HEB. And so, they are our customer. And there's times I will, if I don't have it, I mean, hey, call this store. I send them X amount of sacks this morning. So we send that business back. But then I have people at times, they'll kind of get frustrated. I may quote a price and they're like, well, HEB is this price. And HEB will, and it's obviously a $1 billion company. So,
sure.
They can have 99-cent crawfish, which they hadn't done that in a while, but it's to get you in to buy.
Yeah, you're going to buy
things,
all the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, when the brisket's cheap, they're losing money on it. But and at the end of the day, I tell people when they make that argument, well, they're cheaper. I'm like, well, they're a $1 billion company. I can't do that. This is not a hobby.
I'm not selling potatoes and corn and all the other stuff that kind of go along with this and the rest of your grocery list for that day or that weekend or whatever. So so I mean, your bread and butter to what you're selling is the product itself, and so you're trying to keep that in a reasonable market value of what it is that you're selling back to the customer. You're not in the business to go, man, if I can make $10 a pound, that'd be awesome. You know, I mean, you're sitting there going, listen, I'm looking at what market value is for this stuff. If HEB, who has the buying power and can take the markdowns on all the stuff, can sell it for that, hey, good on them. But it's just like anything else. It's an advertising ploy for something else. They wouldn't make it in business if that's all they sold. And so, and knowing that your money is leaving your pocket and going into a local business owner's pocket that then has to redistribute that down in whatever avenue that is, paying his bills, going and working through his distributorship to be able to get more product back. And quite honestly, and I think this is the part where the rubber meets the road for people who talk about price. If they want your price to go down, you need to do more business.
Yes, exactly.
So if business is great for you, then pricing can be one of those things that you can start manipulating as well too. You'll never reach 99 cents per pound, but you can manipulate pricing as well too based on what those orders look like. So if it's a thin season, well then you're trying to maximize as much as you can get out of that, as opposed to, hey man, I got a heck of a season going on here, so let's bring the prices down where I can drive even more volume out of here. And still be just as, if not more profitable, being able to do
that. And that happens, when the market in Louisiana drops, like when COVID really hit the farmers, all of a sudden they were at a standstill.
Right.
They couldn't get anything out either. And so they're really depending on us. And so the market in Louisiana dropped a lot, last year. We could have easily just held tight and went, we'll make more money now. But we dropped our price, our margins completely just to push more product for them, and it worked out, for them, that they're able to keep moving, moving sacks and stuff. So, we do look at that a lot. We may drop our margins, like you said, to push more volume because we've got it, or things are going really well. Hey, let's drop that margin a little bit, and that's something that we pay attention to other people's pricing. And I follow crawfish people from Houston to East Texas just to see where am I at, and are we okay on our margins? And usually we're either going to be just a little bit more expensive than Houston, or sometimes we're the same price as somebody in Houston. So we pay attention to that,
Well, and so there's some things to kind of investigate behind all of that, right? Like if somebody is not a big operation and they're selling it dirt cheap, well, then you got to question quality.
Correct. There's what they call peelers out there, and they're the smallest ones. They're usually the peeling crawfish are like, they're small, but they're usually reserved for the peeling plants in Louisiana. So what that is like, if you ever get the frozen crawfish tails at the store, those are what they call peelers. And so there's people that will actually sell those. And so you may see somebody go, man, I can get it for, they're way cheaper. Well, you're probably buying peelers. I mean, honestly. And so there is a difference in what you buy. So when you see something really cheap, you need to understand it's not always the best deal.
Yeah, it's one of two things. There's probably some infection in the quality line of it, or like we said with HEB, they have enough of a backing in other areas that they can drop that out as their pull, as their advertisement to bring people in. in the thought process that this will bring them in to buy more stuff.
Yes.
And so that's not always the case in the situation. I mean, you're not sitting there going, okay, listen, if I drop my prices to 99 cents a pound, that doesn't mean people are going to show up here and buy 400 pounds of crawfish, you know? So, I mean, I'm going to sell maybe 2 bags as opposed to 1 at best in most cases. So if you're sitting there looking at the retail person, it's kind of the same deal. We won't refer to them as a Karen because we know where Karens kind of carry this. But if I'm sitting there going, okay, well, listen, Chad, I can get, if I buy your 40-pound bag, you sell it to me for $4 a pound, but then here you've made this little, convenient 5-pound bag and it's $5 a pound.
Yes.
And so why don't I get it for this price? It's that same deal. It's I'm bringing this down into something that doesn't typically exist in the market, which means that the value is going to go up because of what I'm providing that doesn't just readily sit anywhere.
And that's what happened when we started the personal sacks and we put it out on Facebook. Of course, you always get that person that's going to comment something negative, and somebody was like, oh, that's actually this much. But fortunately, we had somebody comment right behind them saying, hey, look, I used to work at a crawfish place. They had to work to make that happen, and that's the thing is when you order that sack, now we've got to break open the sacks, and now we've got 30 extra pounds we got to get rid of somehow. And so and people, and vast majority of our customers understand that's what they're getting. They're getting the 5 pounds, something that usually doesn't come in, and they put it in that sack. They can drop it on their stove on their pot, or on the pot on the oven or on the stove rather, and then boil it and be done with it.
It's convenience.
So, and that's what they're paying for, and that's what they understand. They can show up, they can grab it, and move on. And so,
but then even more so, it's like, hey man, show up at my shop here. I'll show you what convenience looks like for us to get it from here to here and then to you. So again, and it's not just we just snap our fingers and we make it washed, or we make it select or whatever. It's we have to go through this process to get it to this point. And getting it from process of A to B for that customer has to carry a tag along with it to pay for it. So and so people who are looking at that again it's if you go someplace and you enjoy the food that you're eating, and maybe it's more expensive than the smaller places down the road or whatever. But again, you're looking at quality or you're looking at quantity, depending on kind of what it is. It's kind of the same deal here. If I get home and I've gotten that 40-pound bag, and out of that 40 pounds, let's say a pound of it, didn't make the wash or whatever, and it's all good at that point, man, I'm good with what I got as long as the quality of what I got is good. And so, and then if I know that it didn't sit somewhere for a long period of time, because let me tell you what, you're not going to go to H-E-B. I will promise you that Mr. Charles is not over there putting it into a refrigerated cooler, and those guys are back there washing it and cleaning it and doing all that other stuff. They're doing it as sack and go. Right. And so when you order it, you don't even get the luxury of doing that with them. And so again, 99 cents means you're going to do some work on the backside of that.
Yeah. When they do the and they hadn't done it in years, it's been a while. I think they've kind of backed off of it, but now my stepbrother, they do a washed option for the Houston stores and stuff like that. So you can get it, but usually you're going to pay more money.
Yeah, that's not a part of that 99 cents.
No, it's not. And even there's times where their wash, what they're selling in Houston, is more expensive than what I'm selling it for here in town. So they're just like us. I mean, they're going to have a premium product that you will pay for and they will make money on. But
well, and again, and coming on the podcast, they get to hear like, listen, we go down night before for day of kind of deal. And so our product's not sitting here for 2, 3, 4, 5 days before it hits your car.
Correct.
And so we're trying to get it as fresh as we possibly can. The only way I can get it really fresher than where we're at is to fish it here. I probably don't want the crawfish that I'm fishing out here. So, but I mean, that's really what your driving goal is here, is to say, listen, I'm protecting the supply chain for quality. And we're going to inspect that even before you get it, is the expectation from you as the business owner. Is like, listen, I'm not going to put a bunch of sacks in here and just go, man, this one don't smell so good, man. Correct. Throw it in the car. They'll never notice.
Exactly. Yeah, they'll notice.
I mean, but that's the importance of also being attentive as a business owner, is to say, listen, if I put myself in this customer's shoe, would I buy this? And would I buy this at this price? And if I wouldn't, then I need to make some adjustments or whatever. So that adjustment may be, from a business owner, that's really kind of the hard decision-making process. Is it's going, chunk that out because we're not selling it at all. Or, listen, I'm going to explain to them what's going on with this. Not all of this in here is going to be bad, but here's what I'm thinking. If I'm anticipating that you're going to have 5 pounds or 10 pounds of this that may be suspect. And so I'm not going to sell it to you at this price. I'll sell it to you at this price on the front side, but being transparent in that because the last thing you want to do is hear about it after.
Exactly.
Right. You'd rather be front
and
side.
That's when people call and Brandon's the same way. And I think some people, when they call and they have a complaint, they're expecting that fight. I'm not going to give it to them. No, I understand that. If there's a problem, we'll take care of you. And they're usually like, oh, okay, well, I wasn't expecting that. Well, I know, I'm not. I don't need to fight about it. There are going to be, we tell all of our employees, 99% of our customers that come in are going to be in the absolute best mood of the day because they're coming in to boil crawfish or hang out with friends and family and they're going to drink beer. That's their Saturday's planned or whatever their day's planned and they're looking forward to it. Every now and then there's going to be a bad interaction. Absolutely. That's going to happen. And of course, me being in law enforcement, my whole day is full of conflict. So it's not a big deal if we got a customer that's just not.
Hat back on here.
If somebody comes in upset, we'll deal with it. Our general manager, Brandon, he was a Marine, so he's used to dealing with conflict. And so, we tell our employees, like, hey, look, if there's an issue, just give one of us. We'll take care of it. But,
and most of the time, it's not worth the fight.
No.
In a lot of cases, listen, you want to talk about a fight, work at Walmart for 20 years. You get plenty of fights all day long, and so picking the battle that you want to fight and picking that hill you want to die on is kind of what I used to refer to my managers at. It's like, listen, it's that same deal. If we're a multi-billion dollar company, why are we arguing about this?
Yes.
Right? Like, let's just take care of the customer and let's move on. Yes. That customer at least leaves and says, you know what? You've earned my business for life because I didn't have to go through what I thought I was going to have to go through. And you've exceeded their expectations in that process as well too. And so again, it goes back to value. You're going to pay this, but if we exceed your expectations every time you come here, then why would you go anywhere else? And even when that sale does pop in, it's the idea of going, okay, am I going to get the treatment and am I going to get the red carpet treatment, I guess really is probably a more appropriate term to it, that I'm going to get when I go to Chad's place as opposed to when I go roll over to big box retailer to try and get it there. Not saying anything, not knocking them, but just trying to say that there's more invested in your customer service than what they would need to invest in their customer service.
I think a lot of it helps too, because this is what we do 100% of the time. So it's, when you talk to one of our employees, even the ones that have been with us for a few years, they now understand the business, so they can help you. They can understand the product, what's going out, and educate the customer as well. Whereas if you ask, the 18-year-old high school kid, I don't know when these come in, I don't have a clue. I can tell you exactly, and I'll tell you which farmer it came from. Because the way the tags are, and that way there is a problem with the product, I can go, well, what color is the tag, or was there a number on the back of the tag? Because that's how we communicate with the guys in Louisiana. So if there's a problem, I can go back to that farmer and go, hey man, just a heads up, this number on the back, which they know where it came from exactly. They have an idea. And that way they know what's coming. And
that customer service chain is important from supplier all the way down. You're considered supplier to the retailer or the retail that walks up to you to buy or whatever. But you're the retail to the supplier that you're also purchasing from as well too. And so it's that I used to always say, I can't fix what I don't know. Right. So, hey, if you let me know what's going on, then we'll work from there and try and figure out what we can do to make this right. And that one question is really, I've heard that question asked in multiple places in my lifetime when I've had an issue somewhere. The question of what can I do to make this right? As opposed to here's what I'm going to do, and then there's really no option. But when you include that customer as a part of that solution, to say, tell me what I can do to make this right for you. Most people don't want to ask that question because they're going, oh, I know what the first thing they're going to say, give it to me for free. So, but then you'll find out really when you have that customer that's invested in the process and really wanted it to be right, that's not where they step to.
Correct.
They step to, listen, man, I'm not really, maybe next time I'm here or knock a couple of bucks off of it or whatever. And even in some cases, I've found myself going, I don't really want anything. I just want to make sure you're aware of it. Because I've been where you are and I don't want to find myself in a situation where I'm having to answer for something I didn't know about. And so again, but being localized, you have everything invested in that. And this is a long-term plan for you. You're already 10 in. we were talking about what your plan is,
Yes.
as you move on and everything. So this is something that you plan on rolling into once you're even done in your police side of the business. So it's not like this is
I'm
something.
trying to get one of the boys talked into taking over, but the youngest, maybe the oldest, has been resistant.
He's like,
It's like my mom and stepdad. I mean, my stepbrother runs it. They're still involved in the business, but they pretty much live at the lake full time, and they'll come home and mess with it during the season. But that's our goal is once I retire from the PD, which, I mean, it could be tomorrow. Probably not. But, if I can do, my goal is another 10 or 15 if I can.
Sure.
That way I can retire when I'm 50, 55 and be done completely, not to work again. But our goal is to not, and I told my wife, I said, I don't want to close this business or whatever happens and go, well, that was fun. Okay. Well, but I told her, I said, I want to make sure we have another retirement, and this grows into something more, which I'm hoping it does.
Yeah. And what you found in 10 years is we were talking before you came on here, is that Brandon becomes kind of that prop up for you to really make sure that the business is going while you're over here doing your full-time deal. Yeah. But that doesn't mean, hey man, at the end of my 40 weeks, I'm out. Just let me know what's going on, Brandon.
Correct.
I mean, you're still involved in the business, even day to day of getting that information back.
Yeah, because he and I talk multiple times a day, during the season, and he's been a godsend because I can, if I need to walk away from something, if I need to be gone for the day, he's got it. I don't have to worry about it. When we first started the business, I mean, I was worried all the time. It was stressful, and now I can, especially when I was working night shift, I'd wake up on, working the weekends, wake up Saturday afternoon before I go to work, and I'd text him, how'd it go? Oh, it went great. Sold out. Thanks. I mean, that's, but like you said, but on my off days and other times I'm involved. And that's something that, from being a supervisor and having a business and leadership, you got to make sure that you're there, that the guys see you, and that if you do need to walk away, you're not that absent owner saying, "Oh, I'm just let me know when the money's here and I'll come pick it up."
Write me a check.
Yes, and I've never wanted to be that way. There's times when I don't need to be up there, but I am.
Yeah.
If they're going to be dirty, I'll be dirty with them.
Well, most good leaders are building good leaders under them.
Yes.
So it's not the idea of going, hey, I want to be an absent leader. It's the idea of going, I can feel confident not having to be here, that the business will run the same,
correct,
whether I'm here or whether I'm not here. So most great business owners build businesses that can run without them. But there is always something to be said about present ownership as well too. But when you also treat your people as if they're a part of that ownership, then they take just as much pride in that as well. Correct. And they're going to make some of those same decisions in the same vein that you would if it were you making the call. And
that's the hard thing to find, and trying to get people to and talking to them. If you know Doc Wilson with the Caprock, and that's what he and I were talking about one day is getting that your employee to have that same investment into your business, and that's a tough thing. And the thing that I think that gets our employees kind of addicted to working is we do make it more like family. I mean, we've always got cold beer in the fridge, so at 11 on Saturday morning, you want a beer, go grab one.
Careful here, Chad, because you're going to end up with a bunch of applications
exactly,
after we get done here.
And of course at work I can't do that, but we go there and we're usually going to buy everybody breakfast in the morning and stuff like that. And so we make it a fun atmosphere for them, and that way they want to be there. That way when there is a problem, they're going to buckle. I mean, rarely if ever, if I'd say, hey guys, we've got this big problem, we need to take care of it, they're like, yeah, we'll be there. I mean, there's no issue at all. And so that relieves a lot of the things too. But they know that, hey, there's a problem, Chad's going to be there, or Brandon's going to be there.
Right.
One of us is going to be there handling it with them.
Well, and there's a level of pride that gets built with that as well too. It's not just the idea that hey, you're getting me these things and or that I can go up and have a beer or whatever. It's the idea of sitting there going, listen, this is my business as well too. Even though it may not have my name on it, it's got my name on it from when I tell people that I work here, that this is who I'm involved with, that they enjoy working for the people that they work for. They enjoy working alongside of the people that they work with. I mean, it's a cultural based part that's intricate in small businesses, and it's easier to build in small businesses than it is in the larger ones because again, I think when I ran the Bryan store, I had 730 employees, and it's hard to keep all those engaged.
Yes.
And you can't do it all yourself,
Correct.
But even in small business, what tends to happen is present ownership tends to take on roles of doing, and then they lose sight of the things going on around them. I refer to it as, your house is on fire and you take the hose and you water the flower bed, you know? So it's stepping back so you can see big picture.
Correct.
And then lead through big picture that way. And you develop people that didn't develop those same skill sets.
Yeah.
They're able to see big picture when it comes to it. Like, listen, this one guy with this 5-pound bag that we're going on, is this really our biggest challenge today? You know, like, let's just take care of it and let's move on. Yeah. And so, like you said, and you said earlier in the podcast, being able to mitigate that loss really becomes, okay, I may do this one thing and I may lose a little money here, but what's the word of mouth going to be from this guy?
Absolutely.
You know, it's when he goes home and he talks about how he got taken care of here, again, I'm earning that business back.
Yes.
Potentially for the life of my business or the life of this person continues to eat crawfish and continues to have his family gatherings and stuff. So, and I'm sure you probably have those customers who are like, hey man, it's getting about that time of year that we do our family get together. And so we're going to need to pick some up.
And there's been a lot of customers over the years that, I mean, I've become really good friends with. I mean, they'll come in and my wife gets mad at me all the time because I can talk to anybody, but yeah, I'll be in there 10, 15 minutes, you know, talking to them, and Brandon's kind of looking at me going, hey, we got work to do.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, I know, but yeah, a lot, because I see them multiple times a year.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of that I've become really good friends with because it's the nature of that business.
Yeah.
I mean,
and again, I'm the world's worst. It's part of the reason why we did the podcast, and I'm the host of the podcast because I really like to talk. But a part of that also is when they come into the shop and they get an opportunity to stand and talk to me, it's an experience.
Yes.
It's something a little bit more than just a transaction, right? It's the idea of, I know who you are. I know who your family is. Hey, how'd your boy do? You know, they played yesterday, you know, so it's building relationships as well that then long-term help prop that business up as well. So, and that really is a huge difference maker. And a part of the reason why people like to shop small, local, is because they feel like that doesn't exist in a lot of the large places.
Correct.
You know, so, and it's not everywhere. You know, I always say that when I do go to places, especially large businesses, when I go to places, there are individuals that do it really well.
Correct.
It may not be the actual business itself.
Correct.
There's individuals that do it really well. Where you can tell the culture is when they all do it well within a business and that they're all engaged in the process. And so they see, like you said, a bigger picture than just what are my roles or my duties. And it is hard to build that. And it's harder to build that with people who aren't engaged in the process of constantly learning, you know, because it can be, I'm sure in your world, it can be a monotonous job as well too. Like listen, man, I can do this in my sleep. Yeah. You know, especially for your guys that do it day in, day out, 6 months out of that year solid. And so, but when the experience is the thing, the conversations, the interactions with the customers, that's the one thing that moves around all the time. You know, maybe it is that somebody, like you said, most people are coming in and they're excited, looking forward to what they're doing. Yeah. You know, but again, maybe it's their first time in, they're not real familiar with it. And so that first time experience becomes, is this going to be number 2, number 3, number 4 for this guy as they continue to go?
And that's something that we kind of did pretty early on in the business is a friend of ours had asked for me to go boil crawfish for him. And it was like a Saturday, I was busy, you know, I was new and doing everything else myself, but I told my wife, hey, tell them I can't do it. And then I about to go to their house and I eat it and I was like, this is horrible. I mean, whoever was cooking for them, I was like, this is not good whatsoever. And a friend of mine, you know, Kevin Caballero had a seasoning business, Cajun-Tex at the time. And I think that same day he went to one. He's like, man, I went to this crawfish boil and it was horrible. Yeah. So he and I came up with a how-to, like crawfish boiling 101 little pamphlet. Yep. And that's what Kevin and I talked about. I was like, if we can teach people how to do it right, they'll come back the second, third, fourth time. If you had it this one time and it was horrible, like, well, that's bad. I don't want to do that again. And I kind of thought people would, it's kind of like barbecue. Everybody's their own expert, and that's the way I do it. I kind of thought people wouldn't take to that very much, but they did. I mean, we gave out those pamphlets like crazy, and I tell people to this day, if you know people, hey, it's my first time, hey, call me. Just let me know when you're doing it. I'll help you through it, or on our website we have the directions on how to do it. It's just a pretty standard way, and people do, and they'll call. I'll turn out great. We'll be back next week, and that helped a lot to help them learn how to do it, because it's a little intimidating if you've never done it before, and you're like, man, I gotta have this pot, I gotta have this. There's, you know, it. But once you learn how to do it, it's almost just brainless at that point. It's easy.
Yeah, when I talked to Justin Manning from C&J, I said, so I'm assuming when you go home, man, you don't really want to barbecue and probably eat barbecue and all that kind of stuff. And his comment was, I still enjoy doing it.
Yes.
It's not so much for me the process of doing it like it is at work. For me, it's the experience of having people there, and around me, and it's the fellowship and it's everything else. And that's really kind of what, I mean, listen, I say nobody. There's probably some professional eating competition somewhere that somebody's putting down 40 pounds of crawfish, but nobody's getting a 40-pound bag of crawfish for themselves.
No. Yeah.
And it is the idea of making that an experience for the people who come.
Yes.
And, again, from the people who are doing it for the first time, for the people who have done it their entire life. But the experience is really the process in the middle of all of that. Yes. Yeah, you're cooking these things up and you're putting them out for people to try, but it's the gathering, it's the fellowship. And that's really always been something that's kind of gone around. A crawfish boil is the same thing as doing a huge cookout on a grill. Yeah. It's the idea of, I'm excited when I pick it up, not because, man, I can't wait to get home and cook 40 pounds of this stuff when it's, 90 degrees outside and stuff over a hot boiling, pot. It's the idea of going, I can't wait to get friends around me, family around me, where we can put this out and just enjoy the fellowship. Yes. And that's the uniqueness about when you talk about a boil. Because we're saying crawfish. I mean, there's shrimp, there's crab, there's all these other things. And to that point, I put this in. No, don't put this in. Put this in. Put this in. I can remember the one that we did probably about a year and a half ago. The one that we did, the person manning the pot goes, "Oh no, you got to put all this in here." And they shake the entire bottle of stuff in there, and you get done. And I couldn't feel my lips after I got done on fire. But again, for my wife doesn't. My wife doesn't like eating seafood. Yeah. Kills me. But she did the sausage, she did the corn. Yes. But unfortunately, like you had said in that statement, because it was over season, it was like, oh, this isn't any good. If this is what a boil is, I don't want to have anything to do with this. So it is. There's a little bit of the intimidation of trying to get it right, so to say. Yeah. Just so that, again, this is something, if I want to get somebody together again, that they all want to come back, because it was an enjoyable experience, not just for fellowship, but for
and that's something preparation. We help them with. If somebody new, they ask about how much seasoning, and well, do you like it hot? Do you like it not? And me personally, I like it seasoned. I don't want it hot. Right. My brother, he wants to be miserable at the end. I don't. I want to enjoy it and sit down and just have a good time and not be sweating.
I don't want to see little specks of yellow in my corn amongst all of this red.
Yes, but some people do. I mean, that's their thing. But so we if somebody new, we work with them and try to. And like I said, we sell seasoning out of the shop too as well. It's made by Targills. It's the Arts, their house blend. Can't buy it anywhere locally. It's strictly from their shop. Got it. And so we sell that at our place. So it's a distinct flavor, and sell a lot of it actually. So it's very popular here in town now. So so the way they ship it in, we can kind of tell people, hey, look, buy 2 bags over to one, depending on how much they bought. We can kind of help them out with that.
So running into, I mean, you're starting off 2021 here, getting ready to open it back up and start running again. What do you see as roadblocks for you here in the front side? What do you see as, I guess, levels of hope based on where you kind of finished out in June?
As far as the restaurants go, we're going to start picking up again, late this week, and some of the ones are ordering about what they did pre-COVID. So I'm optimistic that we'll be back to almost. I'm not expecting 2019 or stuff like that, but I'm optimistic that the numbers will be back on that. But I think with the momentum we had with retail last year, that we're going to be able to hit the ground running with retail. Of course, early season price is high. I mean, that's just typical. So, but I've already had a lot of retail customers reach out, and they're ready to buy now, which is good. But I think just kind of going off of what worked for us last year is continue, and kind of with the restaurants with the to-go meals. I mean, I've seen some get away from that. I'm like, why are you getting away from it? You did something that worked, and it worked well. Stick with it. And that's what I tell my wife and Brandon's like, hey, this worked for us last year. Let's stick with it. I mean, because if this shuts down again, which hopefully not, we got to be there ready for it. So it's hopefully some of the big stuff that was happening last year will kick off again this year. I'm not expecting it based on who the customer was and the shutdowns and stuff like that. But If it does, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We'll survive,
Well, and again, I'd say, having a vaccine out there and at least something on the horizon that's promising, that gives us the ability to look a little further than just being in the storm, is a huge plus for everybody. And so events going off, obviously events are a big deal for you guys as well too, and it's great that people on the retail side were able to keep you afloat during the time frame. Yeah. But you still, those events and those types of things are still important to the business as well too. So biggest thing for us, in getting together was, getting people to be able to identify your business, getting able to know what your services are. Even swinging by the shop and being able to see, the process. Yeah. For me, I haven't swung by your shop, but just looking through your Facebook page and everything, being able, and I know a little bit about the business, so I can kind of put these pieces together, but being able to see the controls and the mechanisms that you have in place. It's not like I'm sitting there. I see a picture of your cooler and I'm going, okay, I don't have to worry about it sitting in there because the cooler's spotless, right? So those are all big important parts of especially in food handling when you're delivering that product to customers, that everything is maintained. Hearing how you go through the process of making sure that you get the freshest product to your customer, and that's your goal. At the end of the day, if you could make 100% of it perfect and alive and fresh, then you would do that. Yes. But the services that you offer as well too are also one more step in the process that can also ensure that for customers as well, especially like the washing process and the selecting process. So using that expertise that you guys have there and then building that into a long-term relationship, that customer always thinks of you first when it comes to needing those particular deals. So, man, I'm glad to have you on the show. Let's talk a little bit about where you're located again, because I know we kind of just said Kane Road, and some people may not be familiar with that. So Kane Road, you're at 2914 Kane Road. Yes. Kane Road is across the railroad tracks, which the best way to kind of describe where you're at, I guess, maybe, are you closer to the Ashley?
Yes, we're right across from it.
Yeah, so if you look at where the Ashley closeout place is at, on the opposite side of the tracks, right when you take Kane Road, you're on the right there as you come across. So easy location to find. Check, I know Facebook has your hours on there. Correct. Your reservation days are, what days are that you work just basically on reservation, like your shop's not completely open.
Usually like Monday through Thursday, you can still get it, but we'll just set a time with you individually, and usually Brandon, usually like I think 10 or 11, because most of our deliveries, we're usually done with all of our deliveries by 10 in the morning. Yeah. So usually Brandon will set a time, I think either 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock, Monday through Thursday, and our customers are good about, they know that we're not open technically. We are, but we're not just wide open. So. Now like Fridays is like 10 to 5:30, Saturdays. Now this is when the season's full swing. Right. Early season we kind of modify it down.
There's no reason
to sit around all day for nothing. But so usually Saturdays are 9 to 2 and Sundays are 10 to noon. Yeah. So and
a great day for you is you bring it in and it gets gone.
Correct. Yes. So, the goal is to be empty if we can. And there's some days, like I said, we'll have a little challenge for the employees. Like, hey, if we can get this cooler empty, I'll give you a $100 gift card to wherever, So it's a little bit of a challenge, motivation to them to kind of push it, because they've all got social media too. And they'll get on theirs and fire it off.
And the potential for you, again, you're going to work off of 2020 numbers, right? Yes. Which probably isn't the best thing to be working off of. It'd be like working 2020 off of 2019. You're in this kind of unforeseen zone on how it's going to end up looking for you guys when you get into full swing. But you also, just because they didn't hit a reservation or they didn't get into a reservation time, time slot to pick something up, don't hesitate to pick up the phone and call you guys so that y'all can check, because like you said, there's going to be times that you go in and kind of order up a little bit based on walking into the weekend.
Usually I always want to have extra on this, maybe not so much early in the week. Last year we did, like I said, whenever COVID hit and people were buying on Tuesdays just a lot, so we would always carry extra. But usually by the time we're going into Thursday, we're sitting 50 to 100 sacks extra, and that way we have plenty. So because we have all kinds of last minute customers, and like I said, paying attention to the weather and what's going on locally, and being able to know what the stores are bringing in, I can adjust my order. If I know HEB's ordering 200 sacks, I may not order as much, especially if they're doing some kind of sale, but if I know they're not ordering that much, I'm like, man, there's something going on locally, and I know it's going to hit I'll order extra.
Yeah, being front side on it.
Correct. Yeah.
And so they can reach out to you. They can reach you guys 979-571-7863.
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming that's right. I wrote it off of there. Or they can email you guys.
Correct.
And that's, is it info
at crawfishhall.net. And then, of course, they can text us that number as well. And then Facebook message.
Yeah, I mean, so you try to make it as easy as you can just to get it out there to them.
Yes.
And so, again, and you don't need a ton of notice on it in order to be able to get it to them, especially once you're in season.
Yes.
Once you're in season, you guys can turn it in a day or two.
Yes.
To make sure that they get the freshest product as well, too. So, well, man, it was great having you in, Chad. I appreciate you coming in today and spending some time with us talking about your business. And again, I'm glad I know, because now I know where I can spend some money at now, and it's an opportunity again for people to keep your money local. That's really what we need here in town, and what we're talking about as a part of the small business recovery here in College Station. I say College Station, College Station area, that we keep that money local and try and support these small businesses who are continuing to see recovery on their side. Some of them slower than others, so, and you're getting back into this. I mean, this is kind of a blindside 2021 for you as you're going into it. So you're going to learn kind of real quick, I guess, here in the next coming couple of weeks, what that's going to look like. So if you guys are, again, you got family coming in, you're having an event going on, you're having to get together, however that works underneath this, COVID guideline or whatever. Now that that Chad also carries, I'd almost call them personal size bags, but now that that he carries those things, it's an opportunity again to be able to reach back to him and or to his crew and be able to get something that works even for your family for just a dinner, not even necessarily a big event. So this is kind of an anytime deal now that you guys have pivoted on to be able to figure out if there's more business there. Shrimp, crab legs. I mean, everything's kind of an opportunity there for you guys. So, and if you got questions, again, reach out to these guys. These guys are going to be the experts in that deal. They're going to be able to tell you as well. I think you guys pretty regularly, based on what I saw, keep market pricing kind of updated.
Yes, every week.
Yeah. So
usually the market will set on Mondays, sometimes Tuesdays, but as soon as we know, we update it.
Yeah, and they go to your Facebook page and see the pricing that you're running for that week. And just determine what works for them. And then again, take some of the pressure off of them. If it's something where they've got a big group coming in, you guys offering different services like washing them so that they're ready to go as soon as they come out of the bag. These are all opportunities, again, that people can fulfill their needs with the services that you guys offer at a reasonable price, that again, that money stays local and is supporting local businesses, and it can continuing to grow into year 11 and on, because again, we got to make sure when Chad retires from the police force that he's got this place to go to and to continue to grow and to continue to say, and again, you've moved once already. You outgrew the other place, which was a great opportunity. I know you'd love to be able to do that again and look into the future of even again adding on more services and more things that you would be able to grow the business as well with. So, but we appreciate you coming in today, Chad. Thank you for your time. And again, Chad Hanks, if any of y'all have any questions, residential crawfish, shrimp, crab leg expert, 10 years in the business here locally. Let's keep our money local here in the Bryan College Station area and continue to support small businesses. And again, we appreciate you just spending time with us today to learn about another business here in town and to give an opportunity for those guys to be able to come in and talk to their business to you. So check out Chad and his group over there and let them show you what good service and great quality product looks like. And as always, we appreciate you stopping in and listening to us have a conversation here. Have a great day, and we'll see you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chad.